The Iconography of the PLCIDIC Invisible Dr. H. Baraduc Hapismiley Paris Librairie Internationale de la Pensée Nouvelle G. Amman, Editor, Rue du Louvre, 15. Copyright 1912 Hapismiley. Preface. The physical manifestations of the soul. The vast world of the invisible. Solar light and visible objects. The difference of study between the here below and the hereafter. How the fluidic invisible manifests itself. The means employed to record the manifestation. Second plane of life. The two divisions of this work. Preface. I here present a second work, entitled, The Human Soul, Its Movements, Its Lights and the Iconography of the Fluidic Invisible. It is always the same subtile force that I study in man. Heather. It makes a needle move which points out the particular movements of it, after having passed through substances. Hitch conduct neither electricity nor heat, or again whether it impresses a sensitive plate by its luminous vibrations. The soul, therefore, moves and shines. 1. May observe its movements as well as collect its living light. It is this invisible fire which Hippocrates called our enormon, internal flame, and which Zoroaster, more correctly, termed living light. Veiled from the eyes of the profane, in antiquity, it is what I wish to bring to light in this volume, and with it, to penetrate the world of the invisible, that of second causes, which react on the material world, a vast empire, from whence all comes, where all enters, where all is transformed. To wish to limit the work of creation to the domain perceptible to our visual faculty, would certainly be only to aspire to know but one very narrow stretch of the vast world of creative power, which we are permitted to explore, even though we could approach the stars by an object glass, or magnify the infinitely small by lenses. In the material terrestrial domain, with the means at our disposal, solar light is absolutely necessary to our eye, in order to manifest the color and the form of the visible material bodies. In the immense region of the invisible which I hope to open up today to experimental science, from the little I have been able to observe, one can distinctly remark the difference, which exists between the objects and means of study of the hereafter, and the objects and means of study of the here below. Instead of being material, that is to say tangible, instead of being visible, that is to say, of revealing itself by means of an extrinsic solar or artificial light, the fluidic invisible is manifested through its own intimate luminous and intrinsic force. A degree of more or less marked spontaneous determinism on its part is necessary to obtain it. One is no longer, in fact, in the presence of purely mechanical forces. As to the means, these are methods which I have discovered, in which the exterior luminous ray of the here below is replaced by the electric breeze, projecting the emanated vibration of our soul, as well as the psychic force proceeding from our thought or attracting the invisible object. Vic tends to manifest itself pneumatically. For this end, it allow vs itself to be magnetized, to be drawn by our living force. One must, in a odd, North how to induct the psycho-odo-fluidic current hitch the plate records on its passage. Further, darkness is necessary to collect the intimate vibration of a living being, for in daylight it is immersed in the intensity of the exterior solar light. Electricity is not always necessary. Is it ancient magic, which comes from the dark sanctuary, where it was adored, and comes, in its time, to bow down before human science and unveil itself in its turn? Perhaps. I have, however, found a method to show the existence of the fluidic invisible, as the microscope shows the infinitely small material particles, and beyond a doubt, I have experimentally opened up the path to the second plane, that of integral life and spontaneous determinism in movement. Whatever may be the consequences of my discovery, this step forward towards truth, taken opportunely and if ponderation can only enlighten humanity, make it regret the colossal error of the negation of life in the hereafter, and assure it of its transformation in the superterrestrial planes. This orc consists of two parts. In the first, the biometer show the movements of the soul acting on the needle, which records them and thus gives the formula of the vital temperament. In the second, iconography show the luminous vibration of the soul, which is graphed on a sensitive plate, and the creation of fluidico-vital images by the spirit modulating the vital animistic force, psychic-ons. Each of these chapters might compose a book in itself, others will write them. Today I am simply opening up a new route towards truth. Movements of the human vital soul. The author's triple point of view. The registration of a movement of the soul. How these were verified and classified. The element of life. The biometer and how it records the state of soul. The realization of Professor Lodge's desideratum. First law of the vital fluidic body. What constitutes our fluidic body? The interpretation of the obtained formulae. The behavior of the needle of the biometer. The formula of the normal state. How neurasthenia is betrayed. The oscillatory movement of the hysterical. The double R61E of the soul. Nature of the phenomenon. Definition of vital force. Its test of action across a vacuum. Further experiments. The proof that this force is not electricity. What the biometrical formula expresses. S. Evolvements of the human vital soul carried interpreted by the biometer. Nature of the movements of the soul. In this chapter, where it is a question of the interpretation of the different movements of the vital soul by the biometer, the author takes up the triple point of view of the fact, of the interpretation, of the phenomenon, and of its nature. 1. Either fact is represented by a needle hanging from the end of a cocoon thread not twisted, hitch, from a distance, without contact with the hand, presents, at the approach of this latter, movements. 1. Biometer, stem Greek, bias, life, metron, measure. Of attraction or of repulsion, which record the direction and the behavior of an intimate movement in us, a movement of the soul. Repeated observation has allowed the direction of this movement of life to be interpreted, so well that, with due regard to its constancy, it has been able to be expressed in exact formulae. As verification, the doctor reproduced, at will, these formulae, by suggesting to hypnotized people the state of soul corresponding to the formula, which he had previously interpreted. When we show, presently, that the movements of the needle are due neither to heat nor electricity, it will be proved by that life is not the chemical function of an organ, but the resultant of an intelligent element, and possessor of its own movement. And by biometrically recording the movements of life, the state of soul and the vital force, it is remarked in a person of well-poised mind as well in a neurasthenic, nervous or hysteric subject, in such a manner, that the biometer, which seems only to be one with the biometrified person, gives a different formula for each of them. This registration by the needle, from henceforth, makes the vital force enter the domains of physics. Thus the desideratum of Professor Lodge is realized, when he said, life is not energy. It is a directing element, which has not yet found its place in the domain of physics. No, cosmic life is not energy. It is neither heat, nor electricity, nor light, but it can give birth to them. Soul or fluidic vital body. From the whole of more than 1,000 observations, arises a first law: half of the right fluidic body attracts the cosmic LIFCY whilst half of the left body repels. The proportion is 3:L. There thus remains 2 unities of vital force in us, since 3 enter and 1 is exteriorized. These 2 unities constitute our fluidic double, that is to say, an ethereal fluidic body, an exact double the caesius of the material body. The vital cosmic force, also called Odic fluid, OD, a particular natural force, Vic, extends over the whole universe, and differs from all the known forces, saturates the organism of living beings and constitutes our fluidic boy, hitch. May be divided into 4 vital centers or animistic powers, namely, cerebral center, cardiopulmonary center, gastric center and genital center. Our organism is therefore divided into a cerebral segment, a pulmonary segment, a gastric segment, a genital segment, which have a radioactivity, a zone of vibration which is particular to each of them. The fluidic body, or astral body, is the intermediary of the material body and the spiritual soul. One might say, with the Pythagoreans, that the body is the chariot, the fluidic or astral body, the horse, and the soul the driver. The interpretation of the formula. When the vital body is in a state or in movement, it determines in the apparatus a similar state or movement by means of the needle. I recall to mind that it was by multiplied observations, by statistics and suggestive reproduction of states of soul exactly repeating my formulae, that I came to interpret them. The right side of the vital attractive body is in communication vs carrieth cosmic life, and expresses the physical vitality, whilst the left side is in communication v carrieth the spirit and expresses the psychical vitality. The behavior of the needle of the biometer interprets that of our intimate movements, of which it reproduces the amplitude, the slowness, the rapidity, the oscillation, etc. This behavior is remarkable in the states of neurasthenic double attraction, of expansive double repulsion. In a normal state, the vital soul reveals its equality and its good vitality, by the equilibrium between the right attraction and the left repulsion. The type of formula, attraction caret, repulsion caret, is that of the well-poised body in its material and moral manifestations. The formula attraction indicating the weakness of the material vitality, that is to say, of blood, of nutrition, of the digestive tube, as well as the weakness of the psychical vitality, betrays the cerebral spinal neurasthenia with predominance in one or the other of its forms. From the moral point of view, ATT./ATT means sadness, fear, contrition. Repulsion/repulsion indicates the animistic exterioration in the great movements of soul, just as joy, anger or exuberance of life. The formula 0/0 gives the equilibrium between the tension of vital force in us and of universal force. From the moral point of view, it signifies calmness, coldness, indifference. Ifata 5/0 is a formula of vital refection, Ata 30/0 is a formula of real nervous affection and of hypochondriasis. Fluidic diseases by default of ponderation. Such is the interpretation of some formulae and their import, but it is further necessary to consider the behavior of the needle, which moves gently, ponderably in ponderated natures or rapidly by jerks with the hysterical. The extremely nervous attract very rapidly from 40 to 50 by the right hand, the left giving nothing. The hysterical type shows great oscillations, attracting and repelling in the same unity of time and on the same side. The more the material body is lacking in force, the more the vital body makes attractive appeals to the cosmic life which surrounds it and with which it establishes an intimate and harmonious exchange. The double role of the soul, its mediation between our body and our spirit, reveals a foresight and a wisdom, which formerly made the vital force to be considered as a mother. It was also on the curative action of good Mother Nature that the expectant school of Hippocrates relied. It was through her that Hippocrates awaited the return to health. All these considerations bring into prominence the final aim of the genius of life, which is in us, the genius charged with the refection of the body and with the manifestation of the spirit. There exists therefore in us a real physical and supermaterial soul, fluidic double of the human body, the intimate movement of which may be recorded by the displacement of a needle at a distance. 3 *** Nature of the phenomenon. What is the nature of the needle? A series of experiments has allowed me to reject the action of heat and of electricity, and to bring to light a special force, vital force, which I should define thus. Vital force is intelligence in movement, concreting matter, that is to say, that it is the creator of form. It is that carrot which models the body. In a vacuum, everyone knows that heat is spread / with difficulty in rarefied space, to witness the low temperature of intersideral space, VL, I have been able to note that the influence of vital force made itself felt on the apparatus, previously placed under a bell jar, in which there was a relative vacuum. New experiments. The experiment of our vital force acting through a block of ice 10 centimeters thick seemed to me conclusive, but since I have learned that a concentrated solution of alum was employed as the adiathermic agent, I therefore made the following experiment. The glass covering of the biometer Vs carried as wrapped in a sheet of alum, formed in such a manner, that by desiccation, a thickness of a ½ millimeter of alum was produced. Now in spite of this isolating carapace, and as if it did not exist, the needle had the same movements of attraction and of repulsion. One can then eliminate heat as a moving agent of the needle. Electricity remained. To make a conclusive experiment, in order to eliminate electricity, I enveloped the apparatus VV carried with a covering of mica, an adioelectric body, and the needle did not cease to be influenced by the two hands. It W carried as then, definitely fixed, that the doctor constituted his biometer with a double R diathermic shield of alum, steeped in collodion, which did not let the heat pass, and with a R dielectric covering of mica, V carried which did not let the electricity pass, the whole covered with silk. To confirm the character of the vital force with certainty, as a force independent of heat and electricity, the doctor took his own biometrical formula with the double-coated apparatus and that during 90 days. Then, he noted how his biometrical formula varied with his state of soul and bodily condition. This justified him in saying that the movement of the needle is not produced by the climatic conditions but the observed formula was the expression of the degree and of the nature of his personal vitality. As conclusion, it clearly follows from these experiments, that it is neither the climatic conditions, nor the calorific and electric phenomena of our material body which disturb the needle, but our own animistic movements, those of the soul in its physical and psychical manifestations. These fair experiments carried on for 3 months on his own vital soul, by a living observer by the side of his apparatus, is a real page of the psychophysiognomy of the soul. It reveals his states corresponding to the formulae taken. The biometrical formula by its sign and its interpretation, therefore, expresses the behavior, the movement, the polarization, even the direction of the human soul. M. Technical and theoretical statement of iconography. In what iconography differs from photography. How the sensitive plate received the impressions. The force wrested from the occult. The former science of occultism. The 4 factors in the production of images, icons. The projections of the human spirit. The attractive current of animation. The best formula for a result. Technical and theoretical statement of iconography. The capital phenomenon consists in how the sensitive plate, which is thought not to receive any impression in the dark, is impressed. The silver salts are converted, not only by what we call exterior solar light and by electric fulguration, but also by the intimate light of the soul. Dr. H. Baraduc. Iconography, that is to say the fixation by the image of the invisible vibrations, has nothing in common with solar photographs, in which the light of the sun produces the forms and the reversed outlines of an object on a plate put beyond the focus of the lens. In iconography, I have not studied the solar light, reflected by photographed objects, as an impressing agent of the plate. On the contrary, I have always attempted to affect this same plate by waves, by emanations, by the intimate vibrations of the invisible or visible objects in more or less obscurity. I have especially sought to obtain the signatures of hidden forces, vital and psychical forces carried refused up to the present. Iconography, such as I believe to have created and exposed, is based on the direct action of the human soul acting through the hand on the plate. Since 1893 my experiments have taken place without any intermediary lens, reversing the image. Solar light is refracted in inflected foci, whilst the animistic glimmering of man, or the force of universal life, penetrates straight into the bodies, or emerges without deviation and traces itself in its very form. The interpretation of the scene forms is subject to discussion, as every interpretation, but in any case, the plate is impressed in circumstances unusual to ordinary photography, and for a quite different use than for which it was destined. It should not be impressed, and nevertheless it is. It was destined to reproduce the exterior light of an object, instantaneously, in daylight, or to retrace its form, the reversed projections and shadows. In iconography, the plate receives, very slowly, no longer by the solar ray, but by an electrovital current, wind, breeze, or simply by a direct emission, no longer the exterior light of the object, but what is called its internal light, its intimate soul, which it records. To produce this image, the condensing apparatus, the lens is not necessary. Iconography is then not governed by laws of refraction and inflected foci, it is a law peculiar to this vital force, to our soul of life, of directly graphing itself without undergoing transposition by the fact of its passage from a dense surrounding into a surrounding less dense, and such as it is in form. To obtain this internal light, this obscure fire of vitality, the whole consists in placing oneself in certain conditions. In any case, here is a new chapter of higher physics /vested from the occult and opening out to man a new world, that of unknown forces, belonging to the domain of the invisible, of nothing is lost, where everything is transformed, and if the terrestrial dust of beings, having once existed, is refound at the present time, one could also discover the shadows of those who have passed, leaving, in the words of Ovid, the body to the earth, the shadow to the tomb, and the spirit to the heavens. One may at this very moment pay homage to the great occultists of former times, who have expressed by symbols the forms and vibrations of these forces, which they kept carefully hidden. Since they had no photographic plates at their disposal to reveal these forces by fixing them, one is logically led to consider them as inspired or prophetic. Perhaps they also possessed means of registration since lost, like so many other things. In the study of the production of the images or icons, we must consider four factors: 1. The operator carried with his vital and psychic power, 2. The electric fluids and the intimed E8 cosmic space between him and the plate, 3. The sensitive plate, a receptive organ, the fixative body of the produced current, 4. The invisible, which does not fall under our senses. It is this invisible which is drawn by the human will, forcing the appeal and creating the attract. Current of ambient forces, belonging to vitality or to universal intelligence. The human spirit will be able likewise to project its own fluidic psychic body, and the plate to collect it. The whole consists in being able to create the current. There is no need of a lens of any kind. In conclusion, to succeed in these experiments, one must know how to create this attractive current of animation, which combines the hierarchy of the known with the unknown different forces, and forms an intermediary ladder between our visible world and the invisible world, in a word, to elevate and lead our spirit so as to be able to put ourselves in relationship with the conscious forces, to act on the semi-conscious forces, or to react on them in case of need. Conrath has found the formula, which shows the best state of soul to possess in order to obtain a result. Laborando, perseverando, orando. By working, by persevering, by praying. HTS of the vital soul. 7 luminous movements unveiled by iconography, the soul as light. The experimental proof of its existence, self-consciousness of the spirit. First light. How the Od arrives on the human body. The formation of the individualized cosmic life. The exteriorization of sensibility. The hypnogenous points. Second light. The shower of life and of light. The fluidic lymph of our organic cellules. Definition of the Somod. Its subordination to the soul. Its relation to the cosmic forces. The final manifestation of the vital cosmic force. The rudiments of the first vitality. Their composition. The proof that they are extra-electric. The form assumed by the exteriorized soul. Third light. The meaning of the term human soul. The soul intelligence germ and the spiritual soul. Of what the particular soul is a part. The center of the soul circle. Existence of soul germ after material fluidic death. Fourth light. The embryogeny of the invisible. The fertilization of the soul germ. How the material body is formed around this union. The moral atmosphere after corporeal death. The ascension of the soul germ. Fifth light, the complete adept. The utilization of the surrounding materials. The evolution of the human mimp. How our fluidic forms are modulated. The condensation of life around the spiritual soul. The free will of the human soul. The power of the resolute spirit. A means of obtaining the first two lights. The projections of a mental image onto a plate. What this luminous vibrations is. How to aid the exteriorization of the image. The three necessary conditions for the expression of the spirit. Hand as agent of transmission. The movement of the soul without contact. Sixth light. The luminous emanations of the soul. When fluidic exteriorization is remarked. The reciprocal attraction of the projected SCO. Re. The inconscious perspiration of the Somod. 5-carat venth light, the vital quintessence. How the spirit in prayer luminously expressed. The ascension of the spirit. The demonstrable existence of the soul. Relation between the spirit and its manifestations. The 7 states of the soul. Lights of the vital soul, 7 luminous movements unveiled by iconography. If the biometer has already shown us that the soul was movements, we shall see in this chapter that the soul is equally light. Invisible to the human eye under ordinary conditions, this light possesses photochemical action powerful enough to be objectified. On a sensitive plate. The human soul, luminous vibration and intelligentified movement, therefore enters the domain of physics, by giving us its own figuration, the figuration of its form. It also adds, by itself, the experimental proof of its existence, similarly to that already furnished by philosophy, logic and psychology. The spirit is only manifested by the soul, because the soul is the luminous form, the covering of the spirit. Not only has the spirit the knowledge of what surrounds it by the exterior means of the senses, but it also has the notion of its essence. The spirit knows itself, compares itself, feels itself one and eternal, as Leibniz expresses it, we know, we feel we are eternal. It is Hy he rectified the aphorism, that nothing comes to the spirit itself, nihil ist in intellectu, quod non prius fuorit in sensu, nisi ipse intellectus. Intelligence perceives nothing apart from the senses, if it is not the spirit itself. Od, polarized thread of life, being individualized in luminous P's. Monopolarized Od being unified with a shower of living light. One may compare the Od to a web having a ellipsoidal direction. Its arrival on the human body takes place according to the needs, in columns of cohesive force and by rounded segmentation in forms of drops, luminous P's, animistic fragments of the attractive cosmic force. Plate 4 presents in a very clear manner these P's and drops, which represent the vital cosmic force instinctively dividing itself to constitute particular vitalities. The individual soul is a part of the universal soul, its separation from the whole makes of it a special individualized form, a particular center, which is in communication with the universal cosmic life in such a manner that the vibrations or reactions of the cosmos or those of our cellular vitality affect each other as if the cutaneous surface were only a fictitious limit between the universal force of life and the individual force of life. Thus is explained the presentiment of atmospheric perturbations by the instinctive soul, before the consecutive phenomenon, rain, snow, W or storm is produced. The exteriorization of sensibility, of which M. de Roches has made a classical chapter of vital physiology, finds in the graphy of this sensitive soul, which the skin does not limit, its logical demonstration. The single fact of making a prick felt from a distance, when the skin remains insensible, shows, not only the out movement of the invisible sensitive soul, but dismisses all possibility of being interpreted by suggestion, since the graphy of the sensitive soul is taken at the point in space, where the prick has been received. This plate shows two bright spots, one under the nostril, the other under the right eye. These are the hypnogenous points. Somod, a complete animistic fluidic body, a soul-formed bidge, the architectural reunion of the web of life, of the lines of force, of peace, of Odic showers, of life-animules. This human light is a fluidic, malleable lymph of life, which the spirit will modulate. It is the living substance, the sign of the forms, which reveal the spirit. This shower of life and of light depends on the Odic or Somod human body. It lends itself to the needs of the creative spirit and assumes the forms desired by our spiritual soul. This fluidic bond, by its ribbons and columns of force between the different fluido-material systems and organs, is similar to that cellular net, which serves as frame, as support and as grouping to the cellules of the whole body. This fluidic web is the vital bond between the small life souls imbibed with and nourished upon Odic clouds. It is a fluidic lymph which maintains the existence of these milliards of life-animules, souls of our organic cellules, as serum nourishes the leukocytes born of the cellular tissue. It would seem that the skeleton of man was the very materialization of the reticulate tissue of the fluido-Odic body of the Somod. The Somod is that fluidic spectre, which is the intermediate agent of cosmic life and life personified in one existence. It is the living luminous double of the material body, which it possesses and maintains. The Somod is itself subordinate to the soul, whether this has or has not reached the spiritualized phase. The Somod is that universal soul of life in us, which respires, that is to say, aspires, draws the cosmic forces of the universal Od, as it repels, expires the emanations of its and accompanies the projections of the will, psycho, or those of the spirit, psychecstasis. The Somod is therefore the instrument of the spirit, but especially the vital force which assures the double movement of material assimilation and of disassimilation. Electrovital particles. The more we advance, the more the vital cosmic force abandons its general character to be divided and individualized. We thus arrive at a luminous manifestation, which is incorporated, is individualized and gives us a type of the well-defined living unity, the electrovital fluidic globule, small creation of man. These electrovital particles, animistic libelules, have an intimate interior life, in equilibrium from the center to the periphery, from the periphery to the center. The study of these electrovital particles offers a particular interest, if one considers that these small instinctive existences are rudiments of the first vitality, the atoms of magic, the spirits of the elements, the microbes of the constellations, in the words of Marius de Cresp. With the magnifying glass, their peripheric shell is seen occupied by a vital p of second light, which sometimes seems to present a small form. Contrary to the opinion of certain opponents, who pretend that these electrovital particles are purely electric, Dr. Baraduc affirms that the globular form is indeed the form of the dynamic electrovital cellule of this small rudimentary soul of the first plane. If the doctor could assert that this cellule was nothing else but the incorporated vital force, It carried vast because he had the direct proof of its nature and of its formation by photography and not by electrography, that is to say in the absence of any electricity. And these particles, no longer electrovital but vital, photographed no longer in the dark, but in semi-daylight, with an apparatus, without any electric instrument, are the most tangible proof of the extra-electric nature which they present. They are the luminous cosmic PSPF, the force of individualized universal life, like the fragments of our human vital soul, being exteriorized extra cutum, beyond the skin, which on contact with an electrostatic tension assume a fluido-electric covering, incorporate themselves and constitute the electrovital particles composed of the universal Odi or of the human enveloped in electricity. Soul germ, horn of the web of cosmic life, intelligentified in man. Once for all let it be said, the expression human soul must be taken in its true physical sense, not in the religious or philosophic acceptation. Its point of departure must be brought back to the phenomenon /Vic human science can record and carry it Vic. Everybody may agree to define as a luminous and invisible form of the spirit. The intelligence soul germ is movement and light. Happy Smiley J. Here is then a object defined in its physical conditions 61 movement, of glimmer, of life, that is to say, by the light which is in every soul and in every man, more or less developed. Only one must distinguish between the soul intelligence germ and the spiritual soul. The particular soul is a particle of the original universal soul, it is instinctive, and departing, it remains in intimate relation, by its instinctive side, with universal life. H is called integral life. Every soul before its incarnation is a wheel, then a circle, the hidden spirit of which is the center, the intellectual germ of its future evolution, hence the name soul intelligence germ, which must be given it at its human birth. It has been calculated that in order to support ourselves, carry absorbed during our life, what a goods train could carry. And who will estimate the amount of vital force breathed in and out during the same period of time T after material and fluidic death, the dissipated cloud of life. The soul germ alone persists, continuing its own existence, guardian of its personality, of its conscience, capable of progressing morally or ready for a new descent into corporeal life. Spiritual soul. The four-rayed pearl, transpierced by the divine radiation. The sphere expresses the soul germ. The four-rayed circle with a central point expresses the spiritualized soul. Dr. H.B. The fluido-vital forms of what might be called the embryon geni of the invisible, in the act of procreation of souls and of future beings, are identical with material forms, with the incorporations of the visible and anatomical embryo. The germinative vesicule is represented by the soul, which presents the same dimensions, those of a little p similar to the luminous p's and to the electrovital particles. And just as the male spermatozoon penetrates the female ovule to be broken there and to fertilize it, by amalgamating its active substance with the passive substance of the germinative point, so the subtile ray of the spirit fertilizes the soul germ by its entrance into the animistic particle of the universal soul, specially divided in luminous p's. The particular soul, spiritualized by the subtile ray of the Father, condenses its fluidic body, its somod, by drawing from the general cosmos, from the universal soul, the cloud of its hypersensitive substance. This instinctive and cohesive force tends to coagulate into a frozen fluid, h the spirit will modulate in form. This almost gelatinous form at a precise moment progressively transforms itself into flesh by the attraction of alimentary products during the fetal life, until birth places on the visible plane a human soul, already born to the fluidic life, before being born to the terrestrial plane by the moan and the pain. At the carnal death, this soul intelligence germ remains surrounded by a more or less condensed atmosphere and polarized by astral light which it has made its own during life by its fluidic respiration and which, after death, constitutes its moral atmosphere. After its elevation, Deprived of this vital atmosphere, it is constituted by a simple circle, the spirit or central intelligence of which has been developed enough to occupy the whole area of the circle, and the animistic circumference of which is reduced more and more in proportion as the spirit ascends. Psychicone. Spirit involving the phoronyx, the imagery, the sign. The complete adept is a center of radiation, from whence comes powers, potentialities, which, from correlations to correlations, plunge even up to the cycles of time to come. Here is the key of the mystery of the property which the human brain has of projecting and making sensitive in the visible world, the forms which its powerful conception has engendered and has called forth from the elements of the invisible world. The adept creates nothing new, but he utilizes, works the materials which nature has amassed around him, and which during eternities, have clothed every possible form. He has only to choose what he needs and to give his thought objective existence. In its invisible evolution, every human mind passes into the state of which physical order is the reverse and becomes an active entity by associating itself, by unifying itself with a particular element, with one of the semi-intellectual forces of the kingdom of life. This mind survives as an active intelligence, as a creature born of the spirit. During a period of longer or shorter duration and proportional to the intensity of cerebral action, which has generated it. Cast Huni Sail Singh, Jewish Mission. Saint Yves de Alvedra. This extract, which I owe to the kindness of my friend, Dr. Maurice Adam, expresses scientifically and with great clearness, what I myself would have stated in a less precise manner. Objectivity, that is to say, the vision for the eye of liquid forms, is a fact, which I myself have several times been able to verify. These fluidic forms, called hallucinatory or real, are animistic creations which our spirit modulates or which we receive entirely modulated by a suggestion of the here below or by a pneumofluidic communion with the hereafter. Life in us is a cloud of force and of light, which it is a question of knowing how to keep condensed and grouped around the radiation of the central spiritual soul. Bipolarized, the human soul has its upper and lower part, the right corresponds to the bottom, the left corresponds to the top, for the form is double. It is therefore by its free will, well aware of the white and the black, of the subtle and the coarse, of the force of life and of light, the force of death and of darkness, the being and the non-being, in such a way that conscious of its position, it can polarize itself in one direction or the other, and takes as well the form, the appearance of it, and thus the good or bad face, indicated by a relativity of light, may be explained. It is before all a question of the training of the will and the sensitive soul. One is astonished at the endurance of the material body, one must not therefore be surprised at the results which the resolute spirit may obtain by modulating the vital force of our body, the Somod, that is to say the Odi, the cosmic force, enclosed in us. To obtain the first two lights, the chemical affinity and the electrocaloric vitality must be diminished, the material body dematerialized, in such a way that the fluidic body has more room for expanse. Ion. The expiration must be done according to the yogi manner, as seldom as possible, so as to condense in oneself the largest amount of cosmic fluid. 1. It is then that with or without electricity, one may project on a plate in the dark an image, well visualized, modulated by the spirit. This latter must therefore mentally, 1. According to Colonel Olcott, from whom Dr. Baraduc obtained these details, the yolk/carrot isolate themselves, lying on a special herb, Samaconia, fall into deep meditation, give themselves up to prayer or to menthrams, divine names protective spirits, whose cadence then surrounds them with invisible and elementary forces, which obey them. They also draw the semi-conscious forces of nature, which permit them to produce astounding phenomena. The training consists in the yogi respiration, that is to say, with long intervals carrot in, at first every minute, after carrot arts still more seldom. Certain yogis are said to make an interval of a quarter of an hour bit carried in each breath. Conceive the image, with force and clearness, to which it is going to give a fluidic body, and under the gentle pressure of the VV carried ill, this image leaves by the hand and is graphed on the plate. To help its exteriorization, a weak tension, like the breeze or electric wind, may be employed. If the electricity is too intense, the plate gathers the scattered fragments of the image and portions of the electronuric signature. One must therefore during the operation, scarcely see in the dark the electric flashes of Hic come from the fingers. Electricity is not necessary for people, whose visualization and will are powerful. These people project in utter darkness the images they create, and often their own forms or those or the persons of whom they think. The plate receives and keeps the produced image. As to the luminous vibration in itself, it is vital animistic force, the image of which is clearly different from the adjacent. Electric, electronuric forces, and of Hic can be obtained independently of them. Recapitulation: the spirit frames an image, modulates it with human vital force, veils itself with a form, which expresses it, and is exteriorized in this form, which is graphed on the plate. Therefore 3 things are necessary, namely, 1. A special state of soul, a particular intimate interior vibration, 2. The spontaneous outlet, or aided by electricity, of this visualized form, 3. Its reception on a plate in order that the phenomenon of these images of the spirit, psychicones, these projections of the state of the soul, may take place. Everybody knows that the visible corporeal image produced by photography is formed beyond the inflected foci of the lens, how it is reversed. On the other hand, for the invisible fluidic psychic image no lens or apparatus is necessary, the image crosses it, without being reversed, such as it was conceived in form. The psychicone is therefore directly emitted, such as it has been conceived by the thought and transmitted by the hand, considered at all times as the most perfect organ after the brain. The hand is the agent of touch, of prehension, of contact, of signature, it is the extension of the brain. This relationship between the brain, the hand and the plate to produce an image without a lens, astonishes physicists, who have always need of points of support to produce a mechanical movement. And nevertheless the biometric formulae daily prove the movements from a distance without contact. The movement of the human soul begets them without undergoing any deviation at the rounded face of the biometer, which it penetrates, in the same way the light of the living soul, modulated in a projected image, passes from the fingers without being reversed. It is the soul itself which acts vs carrieth its glimmering. Oi emanatio I exhalation, psychob. Life considered up to the present in its organic manifestations has only been viewed as a phenomenon of material assimilation and disassimilation of chemical substances. Now, we have seen by the biometer that the soul had a double movement of appeal to the hereafter, of contraction over itself and of expansion of rejection in the invisible. Further, iconography has shown the phenomena of odic condensation and of penetration to feed the soul, the Somod. We are now going to study the luminous phenomena of animistic emanation, under the name of a movement of expiration of the soul, which the plate records, simple obic expiration, projection of the icons visualized and modulated by thought. When the hand is put in front of a plate, the sensitive side, the movement of the needle of the biometer is seen at the end of a certain time, and after the development of the plate the signature of the obic emanation. The needle being repelled 5***, one notes phenomena of fluidic exterioration, similar to those I obtained on a plate of Major Darcet, but I remarked further, that though the needle was not set in motion, the plate nevertheless received an impression. The soul, by its exhalation, projects fragments, scoriae still living and luminous, the reciprocal attraction of which is powerful enough, indistinctly to repeat the form, the appearance of the physical sensitive soul, which it constituted. The strength of vital association, of formative affinity of this soul, is so great, that these rejected particles tend to keep and reproduce the animistic form from which they emanate, as well as the state of soul itself. The fluidic expiration of the material. Soul, an emission similar to urination compared to liquids, to carried air exhaled by the lungs, is still a little of the lived life of the being to whom it belonged.